What we're going to do in this section is carry on with our Docker services. So this is now Node-RED. We're going to set up Node-RED inside Docker, inside the Docker as a container inside Docker. Right, pretty much the same sort of idea. I'll show you some basics, the compose file, some tools and testing. Alright, this is what this is Node-RED's logo, and this is essentially what Node-RED looks like. It's written in Node.js, which is a server-side implementation of JavaScript. What it consists of is flows. So this is a flow here. You can have many different flows, and what you do is you have nodes, and so you drag these nodes across and then you connect them up, and inside each of these nodes you actually can have logic, you can have code, JavaScript code, and then on this side you have a debug window, so you can actually see what's going on. Very, very powerful. You can effectively create programs, flows that with actually almost no code whatsoever, very low code. I'll show you later in a video the setup and how it all comes together. Okay, this is Node-RED's website, nodered.org. You can see what they say: low code programming for event-driven application. So it's been around quite a while. It's now on version 1.2 something, so it's pretty stable, and it's used, I'd say, second to MQTT. It's a huge part of Internet of Things. This is the Github Repository. Once again, you can find the actual code, fully open source. You can you can actually get into and write your own flows and things like that. Okay, and then this is the flows now. So on their website they have a sort of a repository of flows that other people have developed on their own and contributed. So you actually can download this flow and set it up inside Node-RED and then use it in all your projects. Here's the documentation. So getting started, user guide, frequently asked questions, tutorials, cookbook, and again developing flows, creating nodes, and developing the core, and basically the API reference. So okay, this is now, I think over the last two sections we've done Portainer, MQTT, and now we're on the third part now, which is Node-RED. So all we have to do is to implement Influx Db and Grafana to have a fully functional system or framework. This is what the Docker Compose file looks like. As I explained in the last two sections, each one I've done Docker step 1, step 2, step 3. You can see here this is a service, so it has a container name. In this case with Node-RED, it is a much more complicated service, so there are some more settings. What's different about this one is that it takes a standard image and then adds creates a new image and adds some extra services or extra nodes into the palette of you can see this. It's runs on port 1880, and once again you have the volume where the data is collected, that's now stored on your Raspberry Pi outside of the Docker container. This is that Docker file. So as you can see, it pulls in this image, but in this case the double dot means that this is a specific version. So in this case we want the ARM 32-bit version because you're running on a Raspberry Pi, and then this is this extra little bit of code that adds these nodes. So it's these three nodes that get added. Influx Db dashboard. You can do this manually, sort of afterwards you can add, and I'll show you in a later video how you can add nodes. And so that's just a little script that actually takes, you'll see in the video when it runs how it actually then pulls down an existing image and then adds the stuff to it and creates a new image. And this is the Docker Hub. So Node-RED. You can see 100 million pools. So pretty impressive, really impressive project. Very, very powerful. Again, your imagination is the only limit. Okay, so what I'm going to show you now how to do, as in the last two sections, I have created a Docker Compose file. So we will copy this across into the Raspberry Pi. What you'll see here that's different, you have still the Docker Compose YAML file, but now there's an extra directory here called setup. This actually contains some extra files. So there's an extra Docker file here, and I'll show you in the slides I showed you what this file looks like. It actually creates a couple of extra nodes. There's also an environmental file where you can set up your language or your time zone, and there's a terminal shell file that allows you to create passwords. Alright, so at this point now, what we would want to do now, so this is now your PuTTY terminal. If you now do a ls, you'll see we now have 3 directories. What we will do now is change across into the step 3. As you see, if we do an ls, there's the compose and the setup. The compose YAML and the setup directory, and it's now all we really want to do now is to run the Docker Compose file, Docker Compose up. And what this will do now is it will fetch the details, build the image and everything, and then so let's give this a go and show you what it does. So there you can see it's pulling the Node-RED image in that Docker file. So it's pulling this 1.2 something, so you can see there it's actually downloading the files, unpacking them. So each one of these sections has a checksum, and what that checksum does is just make sure that if Docker notices that one of these sections changes, then it'll rebuild it or re-pull it down from Docker Hub. What it'll do is after it's fetched this, it will run that Docker file, which will then create or add the extra 3 nodes that are in that Docker file. That'll help us later on with Influx Db, as well as there's a Raspberry Pi GPIO sort of nodes that allow you to actually access the pins of the Raspberry Pi. So we're almost done. These images, obviously Node-RED is a more complicated service, so obviously it is bigger, but still quite amazing that it's a few lines of code in this Docker Compose file, as I've shown you in the other 2 sections. We're setting up Portainer and setting up the MQTT broker, Mosquito broker. So we're almost done. Now you will see now, I don't know, okay, I'll probably forward, yeah, whatever I'll do. I want you to actually see all of this, depending on your internet connection, how fast it goes. So you can see here it's running that command there, run for add node, and these are the ones it's adding in. So GPIO D, the dashboard, which is pretty amazing. You can actually create dashboards in Node-RED. You will get occasional warnings here. That's because Node-RED is built on Node.js. Node.js is built on packages on top of packages on top of packages. So whoever often created this container, you know, maybe they've used a previous version, and you can see you've got this run npm, which is the node package manager audit, and that, you know, you can actually run that from inside the container, and essentially if you wanted to, you could fix these things or get the latest version when you create your image. So okay, so you'll see now we're almost done. This is really done only once. Once this is done and all this image is built, then you can see now it's creating Node-RED, and pretty much there Node-RED is booting up now. So if you have a look over here, you can see the flows. It's creating the initial flows, it's creating the initial nodes, so that's why it tends to take a bit of a time the first time. If we go across into the web view through Portainer, and we go back to the dashboard, okay, you'll see now there's 3 containers now. If we click into there, you can see now there's Node-RED up and running. So once, as I've shown you in the other sections, you have these. You can actually look at the logs. You can actually get information about the actual. There's inspect, so you can get information about the container, and there you see it comes out on port 1880. If we now go to 1880, you'll see there is Node-RED up and running. So it has a full web interface. On this side you will see here you have your nodes. These are the ones that it added in this dashboard here, and this GPIOD. So these gives you access to the pins, and then there's probably Influx Db as well, which will cater we'll handle in the next couple of sections when we get into Influx Db. On the right hand side here you have a debug window, you have information window, and so what's really quite neat is you actually can just drag something. For instance, I'll show you an example here. If you take an inject, you take a debug node, you connect them together like that, and then what you would do then is you'll see this goes red here. Basically it's detected that things have changed, and so what you can do then is actually do a deploy, and once that's done you'll see it goes gray again, successfully deployed. And now what you can do, if you go across to the debug window and you click this button here, you'll see it sends a message. So it's sending a message through to the debug. If you look over here and you let it hover there, it shows a little red thing over here showing you which message that you're looking at, where it came from. And so the whole idea with, and I'll show you now how you actually can then build up the MQTT, can bring the messages in, and so alright, what I'm going to do now is show you how you actually can hook into MQTT so that you can get the MQTT messages across. What you do is you can create a new tab. So what we would do then, you'll see straight away it goes red here. So what we would want to do is we would get a MQTT in. So we will bring that in like that. And then what's always good is to bring in a debug. So I'll bring in a debug like that. You can tie those two together. Then what you need to do here, if you double click on this, you'll see it says you add a new broker. Okay, so what you'll need to do then is go to the edit here, and you would then pick the address. Now this is what you would type in is the 192.168.1.165, which is your Raspberry Pi in my case. The security, what I've done with the MQTT at the moment is there is no username or password, so that's it. You can give it a name. You can say Raspberry MQTT, and then you would say add. Okay, and now this is what you need to do. Now you need to add a topic. So in the previous section I explained how we want to get the Dallas Semiconductor info. So we would type here sensor underscore DS18B20, then it's a slash like that, then sensor, another slash, and then it is DS sensor underscore 1, and then slash state. Okay, and then once you've done that, you can click OK. You need to probably drag this a bit better, and then what you would do now is you would say deploy, and there straight away you can already see your messages coming in. Obviously I've got the DS D1 Mini with the DS18B20 sensor on it, so you actually see every 10 seconds it's going to give us another reading. So yeah, I mean, that you could see how easy that was. You can create many of these, you know. What you can do is, if you want to, you can copy this now to another one. So you go Control C, Control V, automatically allows you to make a copy of it. Put that down. Now what I'd like to show you is, if you look at this one now, we can actually, this shows the level as the tree goes down. But what you would find, if you go now here and you remove this, you know, you go up one level now, or you even go all the way up like this to this one here, and you type in a hash, which would mean that anything after that will be sent through. So if you now do that, and you deploy it, you'll see now there's many more messages now. Some of the debug messages are coming through as well. So we'll see the next time, the next 10 seconds when the next message comes through, you'll see there's actually more. So yeah, you actually have debug info, yeah, but obviously this message now is lower down. So all three of these messages are coming through now. What you can do as well, if you don't want the messages to come through, is you click this here, and that essentially turns off that debug. Alright, so you'll see now you've effectively turned this message payload off, and you know, at any stage you actually can turn it on or off. You could turn both of them off, in which case if you clear this out now, you would get no messages. This on and off here, you don't actually have to deploy it unless you want to make it permanent. Alright, so what I'll show you now is to now make another node now. So we will actually copy this now to another one. Okay, Control C, Control V, put it over here. Now what I want to do is I want to pass the messages that come from the DS sensor across to the display. So what you would need to do with that now is you would have to you would want to take an MQTT out, and so you would then double click on that. It's the same broker, but what we want to do here now is we want to do update slash, and then you would say OLED slash, and then you would say temperature. If you now say done, and then you would want to link this across from this one to this one, and then you know, then you would now do a deploy. Alright, we'll get, okay, and then you'll see now. And then what's actually happening is what you would want to do now, as I explained, this is sending it across to the LED display. And if you wanted to see now, is that message actually getting to the LED display, you could actually copy this now, Control C, Control V, you would put it down here now. Okay, and now what you would want to do here now is you would want to change this OLED like this, and then hash. You will see now all the messages that will come through to the display will come through as well. So if you deploy that now, then you'll see it's successfully deployed. And now every time it sends, let's just clear it out. Every time it sends a message now, you'll actually get a confirmation that it came from the display as well. So every 10 seconds. Okay, we need to turn this on here. And I'll just deploy it again. Okay, so you'll see now there the reading came in. If you have a look over here, you can see there the reading came in, and then what actually happened is you're getting the messages now from the display. So you see it's display OLED, and then this one is here as well, display. So if you look here, you'll see it shows your display OLED sensor temperature state. And so what you can do then, you can actually change this now. You can add now a narrowing down, so you could say sensor slash ds 18b20 underscore temperature, and then state. So we do state there as well now. And if we now deploy that now, and then we clear this out again, you'll see now the debug messages will not come through. You'll just see, there it's centered to the display, and there you can see display OLED. So you actually know the display got the reading and echoes back the same reading each time now. Alright, so I think that's already quite a big step forward. Alright, what I wanted to do now is to just summarize this whole section. What we have here is obviously Node-RED inside, this is the web view of it, on port 1 or on 192.168.1.165. Here's all the debug messages. If you look back at Portainer, you could actually see now the 3 services that we created over the last 3 sections, Portainer, Mosquito, and Node-RED. And if you actually now brought in the MQTT Explorer, you would see the same values. So this is what I showed in Node-RED. These are what we're looking at. So Node-RED is now looking at these topics. So these are the debug messages I mentioned. Okay, so this is the web server for the DS18B20. You can see there DS sensor 1 and the latest temperature. It shows you there each reading, you know what I mean, as every 10 seconds it sends another reading. Then the same thing for the OLED web server. So there it's got DS18B temperature and the latest reading, and you can see they tie in with each other. And then of course if you look in your MQTT Explorer, you'll see the same values again as well, the same topic, sensor DS sensor 1 state. This is the update, so Node-RED is sending this value, yeah, we are actually now 2 steps away from having a complete functioning system. In the next section I'll do the Influx Db, so we will then be able to add Node-RED, which will send messages just like we're sending it here from the Dallas temperature sensor to the OLED display. We'll now send it to the Influx Db as well. I'll then get in a little bit more into actually, some of these nodes can actually have code inside them.